Hello everyone, my name is Cameron.
And I'm Brett.
And you're listening to The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
We know it's a dangerous business going out your door, or when choosing a podcast, but we're glad you've joined our adventure as we discuss The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
And so it begins.
And there we have it, folks. Welcome to The Last Alliance, instant reaction to the Season 2 finale of The Rings of Power. And I'm going to be honest, I am absolutely exhausted.
I think we all are, but my goodness. Kenzie asked me at the end of the episode, what'd you think? And for a minute, I was speechless. And then I said, I think they nailed it. And that's the first episode I've ever said that about. I loved it.
It was the first time of the 8 episodes this whole season that I put the laptop down and I sat up in the edge of my seat and I just enjoyed the episode. You know what I mean? I didn't worry about taking notes because it got me. It pulled me in like a Balrog grabbing me by the ankle and just pulling me in.
Yeah, they gotta go to like some kind of a training with the whip to the ankle thing, because at least this guy, it's his famous move. Grabbed King Durin, grabs Grand Elf later on. Should we dive into our good, bad, and greats?
Let's do it. Why don't you start us off, Stilson?
Okay. I'm just gonna leave it with one good, because I have several bad and greats. But the good was finally an episode and a finale on top of it where they had some resolution. I feel like a lot of loose ends were actually tied today, and we left with less than we started today.
Yes, they tied up all the storylines I hoped they would tie up. They did, and they let the other ones just kind of be as is. I think they found the right balance.
Yes. We said in the last second breakfast that one of our number one things we wanted in the finale was an identity to the stranger. So we'll dive into it later, but just real quick, were you thinking at any point they are gonna go another season?
Good grief. I was panicking. I was pulling the hair out of my head.
So was I. So anyway, that was my good. Just in general terms, there was some resolution. So what was your good?
Yeah, first off, just hallelujah to your good. Absolutely. So my good was the transition of power from Adar to Sauron. That's something we theorized, right? Was how are we going to get there? And I was quite pleased with the story. I was quite intrigued with Adar's transformation. I actually kind of wanted more from it. Like, let's tease this potential restoration into his former elf self a little longer. But then we get a satisfying full circle event where his children turn on him, and then Glug kind of gets what we all probably suspected was going to happen to anyone who deals directly with Satan, evil. You just never come out on top of a situation like that.
His just rewards.
Yep, exactly. Do we feel bad for the orc? Maybe a little bit. I was proud of his little stunt to get to Adar, but then you see Sauron just sitting there in the background. It's like, well, here we go again. Sauron, he's manipulating others to do his dirty work.
Yep, and then just tossing them out like the trash.
Yeah, did you notice the other orc who went, Sauron stabs Gluk, and this other orc just kind of looks at Sauron and he's like, yes, sir, right away, sir. And he runs off.
Yep. Yeah, part of that was also my bad. So, do you want to finish out your bad, or should we?
Yeah, tell me about your bad. I'm intrigued. And this was an interesting episode. We were just saying, right, that for an episode that we loved, there were also a lot of things that kind of bugged us. For an episode that we loved, there were also a lot of things that bugged us.
Yes. and that was kind of the theme. I think is there was a lot of highs, but then there was also a few lows or a few disappointments, I'll say. And one of them was, yeah, I was with you about Adar. I If we have to choose between whose storyline moves forward between Arondir and Adar, at this point, I'd rather have Adar's storyline move forward. And how about that restoration also with the ring? That was awesome. And when he started talking about his name and everything like that, and I was like, okay, so at first I was like, so help me if that one theory that was out there about him being Celeborn comes true, I'll lose it. But I think it's pretty safe to say that that is not the case because restored, she should have been able to recognize him, right? But then I was thinking, okay, well, he's going on and on about his name and who he was known by in a previous life. So it must be important. And then he died. And I was like, well, obviously not that important. But as it was happening, I was literally on the edge of my seat thinking, because I've been talking a few episodes now, right, about how there's some epic characters in the Second Age. And I was like, I hope that we get to see one now through Adar. Like, even if he loses his orc army, Sauron takes it over. If he can live and be like I was hoping for Glorfindel today, if he can be that character and, help Galadriel escape with her ring and her life, heck yeah. This is going to be the mind-blowing thing that we were looking for. So that was one of my bads to go along with what you were saying about Adar.
Do you have any other bads that we need to talk about?
Yeah, so I'll just finish it out. So, speaking of Arondir, it's like, okay, he lived. Okay. Not sure how he did that. I'm also not sure how Galadriel plummeted like a 250-foot cliff and could live even with the support of those rings.
Yeah, can I just say we've had some incredible examples of the durability of elves. We had what's her face? We don't even know, but this season's Boromir gets shot by about 15 arrows, and then we have Galadriel falling 200 feet off a cliff. The will to survive matches only Waldrig's, right?
Waldreg eclipses all in that arena for sure.
May the Valar be with him.
But yeah, with Arondir, it just I want him so bad to not be disappointing, but he keeps being disappointing. And it's not his fault. It's just like once again today, right? There's the scene with Elrond, Galadriel, and Gil-galad at the top of the cliff having this little council of what the entire race of elves in Middle-earth is going to do now that Sauron is at the head of the orc army, has the Nine Rings, Eregion has fallen, and a huge number of their army has fallen. And somehow, Arondir, of who knows where, son of who knows who, is a part of this little council. Like, does not make sense, right? And I'm kind of like, can we find a place for this guy? Can we find a purpose? You know?
Did we get any explanation for how Arondir got up from the muddy battlefield after receiving a mortal blow to his intestines?
No, we did not. And we also we got no speaking of along those lines, we got no transition from Bombadil leaving Gandalf in this barren forest to being in the store village. At first, I thought that it was like a little vision quest, but then it turns out that that was just the reality. And I'm like, okay, maybe time constraints, but still, like, why did you even show us the barren forest? You know?
And that was my bad. I wanted to see the intentional decision of the stranger to leave the forest and go save his friends. But it seems like we just picked up. It's almost as if they probably shot it and we're like, oh crap, we have too much material. Let's cut that out.
Yes.
That was bad for me. I was so confused during that whole face off with the Dark Wizard. Like, oh, we're back at the store city. What on earth is happening? Why isn't the Dark Wizard being a little more powerful and dark? And the dialogue was clunky, and the Galdrim didn't do anything. And how was Gandalf saved? We just kind of left him with rocks hanging in the air. Where did the Dark Wizard go? It seemed so out of
Yes.
place, right?
Yeah. Yes. So, I totally agree with you. My last bad was, and I wrote it several times throughout the episode. Where the heck is Círdan?
He's petting the fish.
Might as well be KIA because he's useless. And I'm like, anyway, because it was cool to see the dwarves come in, but I thought for a second, I was like, somebody obviously needs to save them because they're not getting out of this on their own. And I was like, oh, well, there's a third ring that is missing. Maybe Círdan has found like some force and is on his way. Nope. MIA. Can't be bothered with saving the High King and 2 out of the 3 of the Elven rings.
I had that question too. It would have been cool to see them come together. I don't know if Círdan ever really leaves his haven in the lore, but it seems like, man, we could have used more screen time for that guy. He was
Well,
good.
Tom Bombadil doesn't really leave the Withy Windle either, so
So we do whatever the heck we want. So
here
let's
we
get some
are.
Círdan.
Yeah. And allegedly, Gandalf doesn't really go to Rune, but apparently that's where he started his destiny. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the dwarves coming in to save the day felt like it could have been bigger or more exciting. It was just kind of like that was convenient, and Durin's not even with them. Are we ever going to see Elrond and Durin back together again? I guess that was a good little cliffhanger that they left us. That's something that needs to be resolved. But yeah, the dwarves coming to save the day felt convenient and not really
yes,
impactful.
yes. And it was kind of like, why was the army recalled in the first place if you were just going to go down by yourself? You know?
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, looking forward to the reunion with Elrond and Durin. Hopefully that happens sooner than later. Obviously, we saw the intent of Durin's heart is to reassure Elrond of his loyalty and friendship, but it looks like he's going to have some problems trying to rule his kingdom right now that might keep him away from that. All right, what was your great, Brett?
So my great was when we left Gandalf, and isn't it so great we can call him Gandalf now? We left Gandalf and Tom Bombadil in Tom's hut, and that little scene where Gandalf says, "That's what they're going to call me, isn't it?"
Yeah.
Kind of future looking, and Tom Bombadil just gives him his little smile, and then I tell you what I loved. I loved Tom saying, "Now let the song begin." If we think of song and music as the source of creation for Middle Earth and the source of magic, and that's how Tom gets kind of his magic is through song. And it's not even like this beautiful choral, like Valinor type music. It's just pleasant folk singing, and
Right.
they're sitting together and they sing, "Now let the song begin." Grass and crickets and willows, very whimsical, and I thought it was just very, very well done.
Yeah, because like you said, the very creation of the earth was made from song, right? In this
Yeah,
universe, at least.
and Gandalf's whole thing has been, teach me how to if not control the magic, teach me how to use the magic, be a servant to the magic. And Tom's first lesson is, well, let's start singing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. I like that connection. So my great, I had a few. First one was the Galadriel fight scene with Sauron. I thought that was awesome. Pleasantly surprised. She kicked some butt. Not only like with the sword, but I also thought mentally, right? Because he was definitely throwing mind games at her, and even though she saw the illusions, I don't think there was ever a time where she was tempted or was fooled or giving in to what he was trying to persuade her to do. And she landed a few blows. It was one of the only times I can remember that the Sauron character has lost his cool. Like he was shouting and screaming at certain points. So I thought she did a bang up job.
That my thought watching it was, "Ooh, this is just as much a mental fight as it is a footwork and sword work fight." And
Yes.
yeah, she's come, and we said it last episode, right? Okay, we're starting to see that character growth out of
Yes.
out of season one, where she kind of crumbled and faltered. It looked really good. Shout out to the random lieutenant from Numenor in season one who put a scratch in her clothing during that awkward duel, because Sauron didn't do much more than that himself.
I told you the promotion was valid.
That's right. That's right.
Um, yeah. So speaking of a mental battle with Sauron, my other great is dear old Brimby. This was the point at which had kind of put the laptop down and was just taking it in. But Celebrimbor had some excellent, cutting one-liners to Sauron in the midst of his torture and suffering and death. And I was like, the one thing I wanted from you in the end, Celebrimbor, you have delivered and then some. I did not want him to shrink at the end, and he did not.
I,
So probably we'll get a quote of the week out of me for second breakfast out of Celebrimbor during that scene. But just bravo, chapeau, the whole kit and caboodle to Celebrimbor, honestly, for the whole season.
we talk about who won that face-off there in this final scene of Celebrimbor. Brimby mopped the floor with Sauron.
Yes.
And we see, kind of like you mentioned with Galadriel, Sauron got frustrated.
Yes.
He cried. That was a pretty big tear dripping down his cheek.
He
And
down both cheeks. And I want
yeah,
to get to that later, but for sure, yeah, that was something.
Celebrimbor also, I don't know if this was intended, but I was waiting to see another 20 minutes of torture, but Celebrimbor shook Sauron enough to bring on his more
Death.
imminent death.
Yeah.
Which, when Sauron says he's going to torture someone, or when Sauron says he's going to do something, just like with Waldrick, like he does it, right? You
Yes.
don't change the will of Sauron, but Brimby
And
put him in
is
his
usually
place.
very calm and collected in doing it, right? But both Celebrimbor and Galadriel tipped his cup over today. So that was awesome.
And I think the way that the actors played it out, it was believable, and it
Yes.
didn't feel contrived at all.
Yes.
Just awesome job to the actors, the characters.
Yes. The last little plug for my great. I love that they ended up in Rivendell. That was awesome. For everyone who didn't realize that the little valley that they were in at the end. Well, I assume that it is gonna be Rivendell. They didn't actually say that. The Rivendell that Elrond lives in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that is the valley that they came into at the end, I think.
Yeah, it fits geographically when Narvi tells Durin that they've settled in a valley to the north. So,
Yeah, yeah.
safe assumption, I think.
Which I thought was going to happen next season.
Yeah, I thought we were going to kind of strand our stragglers wandering through the wilderness.
Yes. And yeah, I thought that it would be kind of a bigger deal to stumble into. Well, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. It was a good time to do it. It just happened earlier than I thought.
Can I little pet peeve with how the season ended? You know, the sword or the shield? Are we going to go attack? Are we going to fall back and build up our defenses? Oh, we're going to attack. Awesome. Again, it feels like we're talking to 20 people and they're all like families with their pet dog.
Yep.
Like, where is this army that you're going to go on? Like, form ranks. Okay, these 20 people again.
Yes, it kind of has the same impression of the men of Rohan at Helm's Deep, right? Where it's just a ragtag, small number of capable people, and you're sitting here thinking this is supposed to be like outside of the first age, the greatest numbers of elves, the greatest army of elves that Middle Earth will ever see. Like I said, outside of the first age. And it's like where are they getting them from at this point? Because the only other untapped resources, at least that I know about, is the Sylvan elves, right? And they're large in number, but the bulk of the army of the Last Alliance on the Elven side is made up of the Noldor, and it's like, where else are they coming from? Linden should be a lot more populated and have a lot bigger army than what we have seen so far. And in fact, if that was what we have seen so far, then they're dead. So, you know.
Yeah, I think the best of the elves fighting. Well, it's certainly yet to come in the Battle of the Last Alliance.
Yes, for sure. I'm just wondering where they're going to come from.
Yeah, yeah. Shall we revisit our bold predictions, and then we can get to other scenes from the episode we want to touch on before
Let's do it.
coming back and watching this episode a couple times? Starting at the top of our list, Disa is an assassin of King Durin / Ringbearer. She is not King Durin's assassin, but they left us on an interesting little cliffhanger with the rings sitting there in front of Durin and Disa.
Indeed. I thought the ring got trapped in the mine with the Balrog until that scene.
Yes, we need a little clarification there, but so I'm gonna say minus half a point for my assassin theory, but I'm gonna leave the ring bearer
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
portion of it still on there. You predicted that the Elrond Durin friendship would endure. It was looking rocky at the end of last episode. How do you feel about it now?
I think that it is still in the red, but I think that if anything, it trended upward today.
At least for Durin's part, right?
Durin absolutely made it clear that he is still loyal to Elrond. I think Elrond maybe with the aid of the dwarven army at the end and the understanding that his friend was dealing with the death of his father, maybe has at least an open mind about what's done is done. Let's see what your excuses are.
Yeah, I think there's still significant hurt that he didn't show up about 2 hours earlier.
Well, yeah, he was a broken man on the battlefield 2 hours earlier. He was like a toy with a glitch, just couldn't stop repeating the same line over and over again.
Turin is coming. He's coming. Yeah, not till next season. So we'll leave that one on the board.
Yeah,
Aarion as a future Nazgul. We got about 10 seconds of Aarion.
I think that one is definitely still alive, but that one trended downward today. She seemingly selflessly aided her father today.
And it appears that she is going to see Isildur, or at least become aware that he is alive next season.
Yes. And maybe with the combined weight of both him and her father, she might be swayed.
And then chiming in for Gandalf the Blue, the main prediction was that he would face the Dark Wizard, die in battle, and then come back as Gandalf the Grey as a resurrection. So we skipped the death part.
They forgot that part.
Went straight to Gandalf the Grey. So he's not Gandalf the Blue. That was kind of the key portion, so -1 on my end. To dig a deeper hole with the Gandalf prediction, the Dark Wizard did mention that there were 5 wizards that would be sent to Middle-earth. So my bigger, deeper hole is that during the next 3 seasons, the rest of the wizards will come over to Middle-earth. So we'll see Sauron, we'll see Radagast, and maybe we'll see that the other blue wizard is actually already in Middle-earth, or that he was in Middle-earth.
So is that a new bold prediction that we're going to see all 5 Istar?
That is my bold prediction. First season 3.
Write it down.
Write it down.
I will say I thought that you might have nailed the blue wizard thing when the dark wizard was telling him that he convinced him to come to Middle-earth. And I was like, oh, that matches the storyline of the blue wizard a little bit, because it was the 2 blue wizards that were kind of companions, and one of them basically volunteered the other one to come with him, right?
I was getting nervous during that scene, and you know what? I'll say it. Kudos to the writers for dragging it out to the very end. Yeah, I was frustrated, but they found a way to keep it interesting and add the suspense all the way to the end.
They did.
I was worried.
They took it out to the maximum acceptable, right? I think any longer and we would, no matter what they did, we would not have been happy.
Next on the list, Kemen as a future Nazgul. Matt, got to be feeling pretty good about that one.
I'm still feeling great about it.
I would.
Yeah, nothing else to say there. I actually think he's going to be the Witch King. I know Cameron thinks that Lord Belthgar, or whatever his name is going to be the Witch King, but I think it's actually Kemen.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I don't like about that prediction is I want Kemen to die. So
he's kind of got the annoying arrogance of the Witch King who says no living man can slay me. And then a hobbit and a shield maiden
possibly
bring about his demise.
Possibly.
But that Belzegar guy is just sleazy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
So that one's still open. Sauron personally kills Prince Durin. I don't think we're done with Durin and Sauron. I hope we see more of them together.
We are not. Yeah, we are not.
You predicted that Khamul, the named Nazgul from Tolkien's writings, is one of the masked riders in Rune. Kind of got a little breadcrumb into their identity, and
I think that one trended up very nicely, actually, because although one of them died, he did say that his people used to be kings.
Yes.
Which is kind of what you associate with the Nazgul, right? Kings of men is what it says they were, right?
Yeah.
That is a valid point. I've always interpreted your bold prediction to be the only masked person that we've actually interacted with. That would be Khamul, and he died. So initially, I was going to give you a -1 on that, but with your point of him stating that we used to be kings, it is possible that someone else will be Kamul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that we know enough of an identity of any one of them for me to be able to say it's going to be this guy.
And that was kind of I was torn. I hoped we wouldn't spend too much time away from the Gandalf storyline, but I also felt like a little unsatisfied from the masked Tusken Raider timeline. But it looks like we're going to get more of them next season.
Yeah.
Okay, Lord Belzegar as the Witch King was one of your predictions. Any comments there?
Well, I think he's definitely. I would say that the status quo was maintained there. Nothing really went up or down.
Okay. My prediction that Elrond would use the ring to unblock the river. I asked you to give me one more day, and it didn't work out. So -1 there. However, my bold prediction that the stranger would choose his halfling friends over his quote unquote destiny for power, and it would be from the store village tree that he gets his staff, was spot on.
The store tree with the staff was really good. The halfling's destiny, that was okay, but the staff from the store tree was really nice.
So, what shall we say? Plus 10 points?
let's do 2.5 to make you a good round number.
Oh, -1.
So total -1. I was gonna give Matt 5 if it was Gandalf the Blue, by the way.
Holy cow. I was waiting
epic.
for it.
Okay. Is that all of
So
our
our
bold predictions?
It is. So our season 2 standings on bold predictions. Me and Matt combined, well, are tied for second place with -1. Woohoo!
Excellent.
And Cameron, very well done. I don't know if the Muriel Elendil bold prediction is worth a whole point. That was pretty.
It's worth a whole point.
You can have it. Any new bold predictions at this point? Matt added that we will see the other 5 wizards during this show. I might need some time to think about my bold predictions.
I was gonna say let's add bold predictions in the second breakfast as we talk about what we think is gonna happen in the coming seasons.
Great.
Does that work?
Fantastic. Yep. Let's talk about maybe some other highlights just that really stuck out to us from this episode, and then I'm sure we'll have a lot to dive into for second breakfast. Also, just as a reminder, we plan on doing a season recap episode where we look at the season as a whole, and an episode called the Brimby Awards, where we hand out awards for all sorts of categories, and we'll send out some polls and some surveys to our listeners and invite you to vote on those. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a lot of fun. We even talked about potentially live streaming it, which
would be a first for us, but we will see if we can pull that off.
Yeah, why not? I think we need to talk about the opening scene of King Durin and the Balrog. The title of the episode was Shadow and Flame, description of the Balrog.
Yep.
I think both you and I have comments on the look on King Durin's face when we first see him. He looked like a dang phantom menace.
Yes, he was a shell of a man, wasn't he? And it was one of those moments where, the lights are on but nobody's home. And I was like, man, that's a perfect face for that little saying, Yeah, he was totally consumed by the ring at that point, which, well, he later redeemed himself by being able to take it off on his own. But at the time it was kind of like, wow, he has totally given in to this, which is somewhat against what we have been saying about the dwarves' hardiness and resilience against that particular aspect of bearing the rings, right?
Yeah, yeah. The question I've had all week, I've asked Katie, my wife, talked to Matt about it. I think I threw it in our group chat. Is there a difference in the way we perceive Celebrimbor's struggle through kind of being ensnared by Sauron in person and King Durin being possessed by the greed that's coming from the influence of Sauron? It seems like the way we've talked about it, or maybe the way the show's portrayed it, that there's a bit more sympathy towards Celebrimbor. Should King Durin get a bit more credit than maybe what we've given him so far?
I think the reason that we have sympathy for Celebrimbor is just because we know more about Celebrimbor. Um, King Durin was a pretty hard guy before he got the ring, right? So it was hard to empathize and relate, I think, where the Celebrimbor outside of Sauron is a very, peaceable, amiable type fellow, right? Like think of that the porch scene last episode where he's just sipping his little drink in the morning, listening to the birds and looking out over his city. And I think that that's where the sympathy comes from, is we can see the true goodness within him, and it's easy to empathize with that being corrupted.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I do want to make sure we give some credit to King Durin for the way he met his end. He willingly takes off the ring. I do
Huge.
have a question. I do have a question of: is there any part of that of him saying, "Well, I'm about to die. I'm going to pass on this heirloom to my lineage"? What do you think, Cameron? Was there any? It seems like he left the ring. I thought he was just going to let it die in the flames, but it now seems like he is leaving the ring to his son as an heirloom of his new kingship. Is there any truth in that?
It very well could be. I think that the bigger statement that he was trying to make is, I love you more than I love this ring, and let me show you. Because really, if he wanted to stand any type of chance against that Balrog, he would have kept it on, right? And and also would have probably wanted it to be lost permanently anyway, right? Even if he had had a change of heart. But I think that he wanted to make the statement to Durin, this does not own me and is not bigger than my love for you, my son.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope that's the case. I loved the arm wrestling analogy, and I loved Durin's last words of, "I never let you lift your hand, my son. It was just you getting stronger." And then
Yep.
goodbye. Does
Yeah,
he
that was
call him King Durin at the end?
he does. Yep. That was a beautiful moment.
Yep. Kudos to him. Let me ask you real fast. How would you rate on a scale of 1 to 10 your satisfaction with the whole 30 seconds of screen time that the Balrog got?
As we've talked about before, I think that I like that they are matching the depiction from Peter Jackson's films. Scale of 1 to 10, 4 or 5. It
Yeah,
wasn't it wasn't really that epic.
yeah, I'm struggling. I just it didn't feel like as big of a payoff as they've tried to make it seem like the marketing of the Balrog and the teasing of the Balrog since last season. I'm like, and it was all for that. Seemed like we could have spent more time in Rune or Eregion, but they were committed to showing us the Balrog.
Well,
And
it had a purpose to keep the dwarven army out. We needed a reason for him not to show up.
yeah, that's true. Good little
And
plot device.
why not throw a little fan Easter egg, you know? That seems to be a thing they like doing, even if
Yeah.
it is for 30 seconds.
Yeah, he has mastered the ankle grab, as we mentioned.
And the more I think about it, though, the more I'm kind of the opinion that the only truly epic scenes that I can think of with a Balrog would be, I mean, Gandalf a little bit in the Lord of the Rings, right? But you think it would take. I don't even know if Durin's entire army could take out the Balrog. You know,
No.
and in fact, we know later on that they don't. Khazad-dûm
Yeah.
falls, right?
Yeah.
So the only truly epic battles with Balrogs, in my opinion, are probably out of the first age. So we're not going to get that this time. And just as a reminder, a Balrog is on the same level of like being as the wizards and Sauron. A Balrog is a corrupted Maya, right? Kind
Yep.
of like Adar is an Uruk, which is a corrupted elf.
Yep. If we go over to Rune, I don't know if I'm ready to talk about anything else in Rune. I think I need to go back and watch the episode before I come back with any more comments. But is there anything that stood out to you in Rune that we need to visit?
One thing I wanted to talk about was just the eye symbol on the saddle that we briefly saw. Did you think that that is an association with the writers or with the Dark Wizard? Because it seems like the Dark Wizard is not in league with Sauron, but wants to usurp Sauron.
Yes. Is it more of a symbol of his like staff too? The shape of his staff with the red jewel in the middle.
Oh, that could be.
Which is interesting. If so, it would be the second time in the show that we've got a symbol that at first glance we associate with Sauron, but is actually being used by opponents of Sauron.
True.
The first being Adar's sigil that he was branding into all of his followers.
Oh, yes, true. So, we'll see on that one, I guess. But yeah, that was kind of a new revelation, right? Where we thought that he was going to be a servant of Sauron or in league with him, but it looks like he's just another power-hungry Maya like Sauron and wants it all for himself. So I think he actually sent those cultists to try and find him so that he could convince him to follow him instead of being his own entity.
Yeah.
Which at first you thought they were finding them or seeking Sauron out so he could like be their leader, right?
Yeah. Speaking of the cultists, I meant to make this point earlier, but I thought the showdown between Gandalf and the cultists in season 1 was way more suspenseful than the showdown we get with the Dark Wizard himself in this episode. I guess just speaking again to my bad comment that we did not see the full might and power of the Dark Wizard, and that was a bit disappointing.
No, we didn't. I don't know if I was disappointed because that would have been a lot for one episode. and I think that it may have come off as being rushed. I want more build up between the Dark Wizard and Gandalf.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. Yep. So we
Yeah,
head to
that's all
Numenor.
I was gonna say that's all I've got for Rune. Yeah, let's go to Numenor.
Okay. We get to see a special sword called Narsil.
Oh baby, that was awesome.
It was good, and I thought it was we talk about fan service, and some of them seem to work well, others don't. This one worked really well.
This one was perfect.
Yeah.
It played the music from the Lord of the Rings when the sword is featured. He even pulled it out of its scabbard the same way that Aragorn does when Elrond delivers it to him. And even I thought he even looked at it the same way. And I was like, that is fantastic. Loved it.
And Lloyd Owen, the actor, I think they cast so well. He looks like he could be Aragorn's great grandfather.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was awesome. I thought of all the dang kisses we've seen this season, we were finally going to get one between Muriel and Elendil. Just separation of state and romance for her. She is keeping her distance. And I even said out loud to Matt while we were watching, like, come on, lady, just give it up. Just quit with the diplomacy, right off with the guy. There's no point in you sticking around.
She does seem to be coming into her own a bit as a seer, though, which is interesting since she's blind, right? Her seems like her blindness has opened up her third eye or whatever you want to say it is. But maybe she knows something we don't about what's coming down the road for her. We'll see what happens there, I guess. But I thought that that whole thing with the sword and everything, it's like she knows what's coming for old Elendil, you know?
Yep. So Elendil's fulfilled the vision that he saw in the Plantier. He's riding off and heading to Anarion, his missing son out in the west with other faithful. She is in shackles in front of Farazan. Is that a wedding ceremony? Kind of unorthodox?
It could be. I don't think you can kill her.
No. I actually enjoy her character.
Yeah. I thought it was good to finally get some more pseudo screen time for Anarion and to finally know his location in Andunier. And we also got to see in real life the vision that Elendil had in the Palantir of him riding away from the city. So we now know that he is headed to Andunier, which is one of the regions of Numenor. Well, I think Andunier is actually the capital city of that particular region, but one of the 5 points. So Numenor is like a starfish almost, right? And so one of the 5 points is a region that I'm assuming, father is still alive and is the lord of. So that's where he's headed.
Yeah. So an interesting resolution, part resolution, but we see how Farazan uses his vision into the Plantier of Sauron to his advantage, and he convinces everybody that the reason Muriel survived the abyss was she had help from a sorcerer who bewitched the sea, and this man's already been here once, and that was Sauron. Matt, you said too, like, where's the evidence? Like, where's the critical analysis from the jury in, like, he shows shows a letter to someone. I can't remember what it looked like, but how exactly are we convincing people that Sauron is behind it?
Exactly. I thought, what's on the letter? And why is that guy giving any credence at all to the letter? Because are we trying to say that like Sauron wrote her a letter and because it's signed Lord Sauron at the bottom, we're gonna take that as, fact? That seems bizarre to me. Like, why even go through the hassle of making one? We'll obviously find out more in what looks to be her trial coming up, right? But the other thing I thought is that's an interesting route to take because if they stick to the lore, which I think they're gonna have to. Well, they don't have to, but it's a lot richer story if they do, in my opinion. They end up pretty much worshiping Sauron, right?
Yeah.
And uh, really, they worship Morgoth, but they treat Sauron as the prophet, basically. And so it's going to be interesting how they are able to transition from Sauron's alliance with the faithful is the reason that we are imprisoning, executing, banishing, whatever they end up doing with the faithful. But next year, we're all going to be best buds with him. So, you know.
Yeah. Anything else in Numenor?
Just a few caveats off of what we talked about from Numenor. So, a connection to that about face of allegiance. You saw that with the orcs today, right? We'll
Yeah.
get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. And then with the religion aspect of it, you saw last episode that Adar was doing kind of a last rites for his children, and mentioned something about darkness and flames. I think something along those lines. And it was cool to see him reject that today when he was temporarily restored by Ninya. And it was like, okay, he has thrown off the religious ties that he had to Morgoth, which is a big deal.
I need to go watch that part of the episode again too, and bring it up in Second Breakfast, because it just seemed like there was so much going on in the dialogue and the restoration. And I didn't take very good notes, but I wish we'd kind of held on to him a little longer. I loved the Adar character, and I think he was a great addition to the story.
If my hopes come true and he is Glorfindel, there is a possibility we could see him again.
You think Glorfindel would be a leader of orcs for thousands of years?
Well, no. But also, how many other things are not according to, right? I'm not ready to make it a bold prediction. I'm just saying, since they're deviating from the path anyway, Glorfindel does get restored. So, and even if it's not Glorfindel, there is still a possibility that whomever he is, he could still get restored. The Valar have that ability and have done it before.
They did take the time to tease that he has a name that may or may not be significant. There was a huge emphasis this episode on names all across the board. And
Yes.
I want to analyze that and make that a point of discussion in Second Breakfast. But
Yes.
so we shall see. We shall see.
But a bold prediction is brewing there. I will say that.
Okay. I like it. That's why it's bold. Pelargir, real quick. Theo and Isildur seem to be buddies. I think Theo's still going to turn to the dark side and betray Isildur. Maybe King of the Dead. It was slightly off from my original prediction.
He's definitely got a storyline of those dirty Numenorians coming along, I feel like.
Ooh, yeah. Lots of class discussion, lots of low man drops.
Yeah.
Estrid is hanging out with Hagen, and their love is gonna survive as long as their house. I don't have a whole lot of hope for that house. If it was anything like the South Flinders homes.
I
Kemen's a
do think,
freaking idiot.
though, it looked like he might have realized maybe what he has the potential to lose when she almost got on the ship with Isildur. And you notice that he kind of went to grab her hand at the end. So maybe it was just the spark that they needed. Also, like you mentioned, he finally received a name.
Yeah, he was named.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah, he's coming back for season 3.
Yep.
And yeah, Kemen's got to die. He's just the scum of the earth.
Yep. And I just when Hagen was named, I was like, Nazgul? And I'm like, we have gotten ourselves into such a tizzy about there's a Nazgul around every corner.
That's right. Which I think we've got to assume, right? Sauron does have the 9 rings. That's got to be part of season 3. The distribution.
It'll definitely be part of it. To what extent, I'm not sure yet.
I think to wrap up, shall we head back to Eregion? I wanted to just maybe revisit Celebrimbor's final moments again. And
yes,
really, I just... Did he use the title Lord of the Rings as an insult? And did that catch Sauron off guard? It seemed like that struck a chord in Sauron's immortal being that flipped kind of the anger switch.
Well, I think that was after Celebrimbor was already impaled. So I think the anger switch was flipped already. I honestly don't know if those were tears of joy or tears of sadness at what Celebrimbor was prophesying. I don't know if they are trying to depict to us that Celebrimbor gave him the idea of the One Ring.
Yeah, because he says one will... What does he say?
One ring will be your downfall or something like that. One of them will be the cause of your ruin or something along those lines.
Yeah, we'll have to go rewatch.
Yeah, I don't know if it was kind of a realization and a kind of an epiphany about the One Ring or what, because you saw at the end he was holding Fëanor's hammer, right? And was obviously like, we're not done yet.
I think one of the things I mentioned in our preview episode for season 2 was, are we going to get any reference to the One Ring in this season? And I think we settled on probably too soon, but we did get it right at the end.
There was a vague reference
to one.
Yeah, to One Ring. Yep. Something that I thought was a good little nugget was Sauron says yours was the fire that crafted the marvels of the age. A little bit of a double meaning, but the larger meaning is the less obvious one, in my opinion. So in the text, it talks about Fëanor, right, and his forging of the Silmarils, and also all the other things that he did, but talks about how he spent or put a lot of his fire into that creation, right? And that he was an elf with a lot of fire, quote unquote, is kind of what they use. And it's a good connection to be it's kind of like the light that we've been talking about, right? Where it's this power. And so it wasn't just wanted to point out it wasn't just talking about the fire of the forge that made the rings. It was Celebrimbor's essence, his fire that went into them, which added a little bit
Great
of a
callback.
deeper meaning.
Yep. One other point from the scene in the forge that I thought was cool is Sauron drops the word melon for friend, the Elvish word for friend. It says there are ways of keeping you alive, melon. That was pretty sinister. Also, one other thing is when Gluck walks in and says, are you Sauron? And he's like, I have many names, again with the names, and again, he's used that line many times. But he says, what is yours, Uruk? Like, just tremendous. That was the beginning of the manipulation. Like, when was the last
Already.
time? When was the last time anyone asked Gluck his name, including
Yep.
Adar? Like,
Yep. Yeah,
so
100%.
good, so good.
Now, were you fooled at all when Gluck came into the camp on a stretcher?
I was, yeah.
I thought, oh, yeah, for a minute, I definitely thought, wow, he is loyal to Adar. They got me.
They did. I thought it was fantastic, and that was why I called it a good. I thought it was a convincing plot, and now that I think about it, it was probably Sauron's design.
Well,
Probably
of
wasn't Gluck's
course.
idea. Yeah.
It was exactly what we had predicted, but for a second, they made us question it.
Yep. Yeah, I thought he was loyal to Adar.
Yeah.
Sauron is good at what he does.
Yep. Yeah, anything else with Celebrimbor you want to talk about?
No, I think Second Breakfast will have a couple things, but
Yeah.
again, hats off to the guy.
I want to know where Gil-galad's spear is.
Maybe they confiscated it.
He needs it back.
It does if they stand any chance.
That is not just a random trinket.
Anything else before we get to the quote of the week?
Yeah, one more thing I want to ask you is, would you go back to Numenor if you were a Isildur, knowing now that your father is basically public enemy number one, sounds like. The faithful are all enemies of the state. You have an alleged love of your life that can't get on the boat. And you're leaving the people of Pelargir in the hands of a tyrant. Would you go?
Would I, Brett, make him go back? No way. Would season 1 Isildur go back? No way. Would season 2 Isildur go back? Yep, it looks like he's grown a little bit, and he is on his way to go help his dad.
I think if anything, yeah, he's just gonna go try to rescue his father. That's the only thing I can think of as to why he would choose to board that boat.
Yep.
I have been impressed though with Isildur so far this season. Even though we've seen very little of him, it seems like this time on his own in Middle-earth, away from his father and Numenor, have been kind of a bit of a rite of passage for him. And notice that in this episode a little bit, right? Where he's talking a little bit about his experiences, and I don't know, it just makes it sound like he has seen the world through different lenses in the past few months or however long it is, right?
Yep.
So looking forward to seeing what he well, look looking forward to seeing a lot of things, and we'll get to that in Second Breakfast, but looking forward especially to Isildur and how he continues to develop, especially once he gets back with his dad, right? Because there's a little bit of an unfinished business there.
Yep. Let's end with our quote of the week. Matt, our editor, is going to deliver the quote of the week for us.
So this requires a little bit of setup. In Rune, we hear the Dark Wizard say, pity will not defeat Sauron. That brought me back to a moment in the Fellowship of the Ring where Gandalf just finished explaining the history of the One Ring and the evil that it can bring. And Frodo says, it's a pity Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance. Gandalf replies, pity. It's pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. Many that live deserve death. Some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? Do not be eager to deal out death in judgment. Even the very wise cannot see all ends. My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play in it, for good or evil, before this is over. The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many. And then Frodo replies, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And so you can imagine Gandalf thinking about the last time he had a conversation about pity was in this moment in Rings of Power, where he was told that pity will not serve anyone. And then Gandalf replies in the Fellowship of the Ring, he said, so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides that of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you were also meant to have it. And that is an encouraging thought. And so the quote of the week comes from the final scene with Tom Bombadil and Gandalf. And Gandalf is discovering his name. He's found his staff. And he says to Tom Bombadil, I was meant to choose friendship over power. I was meant to help them. And so in the end, it's not about gaining power and becoming the greatest. It's about choosing to help others and to sacrifice a little bit of yourself to overcome the evil and darkness in the world.
Amen to that.
Yep, huge theme of all of Tolkien's writings, right? Well put.
Wonderful finale to an awesome season. We'll dive more into it in our second breakfast. For now, thanks everyone for joining us through season 2. We look forward to some new episodes coming up. Our second breakfast, our Brimby Award show, and hope you'll join us then. Until then, Namarie. Thank you for joining our fellowship on this episode of The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
And if you enjoyed this episode even half as well as you should have liked, or liked half of it half as well as it deserved, please subscribe, comment, and share.
We'll see you next time.